At 5:04 in the afternoon, 30 minutes before the first pitch of a World Series game, the ground beneath 62,000 fans began to move. It was October 17, 1989. Candlestick Park, San Francisco. Game 3 of a World Series unlike any before it, the Oakland Athletics against the San Francisco Giants. Two teams separated by a single stretch of gray water. They called it the Bay Bridge Series. The BART Series. You could board a train at one team's ballpark and step off near the other. The whole region was drunk on it. For once the rivalry wasn't poison, it was a family argument playing out in living rooms and barrooms across the bay. Fathers rooted green and gold, sons rooted orange and black. Office pools. Bumper stickers. Flags hanging from windows on both shores. Two cities that usually looked past each other were, for 1 week in October, staring straight at the same thing. The Athletics were a machine, maybe the best team in baseball. Jose Canseco and Mark McGwire, the Bash brothers, the most feared pair of sluggers in the game. Dave Stewart glaring in from the mound. They had already taken the first 2 games in Oakland, methodically, and now they came across the water up 2-0. The Giants, with Will Clark's perfect swing and Kevin Mitchell's monstrous season, were home at last, backs to the wall, needing everything to break right just to breathe. In the ABC broadcast booth sat Al Michaels, the same voice that had asked a nation 9 years earlier if it believed in miracles. Tim McCarver beside him. The pre-game show was rolling out to something like 60 million people. The stands were nearly full. Somewhere in them, players' wives held their kids and waited for the anthem. And then the cameras shook. For a heartbeat, the crowd thought it was them, 62,000 people stamping and roaring at once. Then the tremor kept climbing. The light towers began to sway against the sky, and the cheering died in every throat at once. The shaking lasted roughly 15 seconds. 15 seconds that split California open. It measured magnitude 6.9, its epicenter deep in the Santa Cruz Mountains near a peak called Loma Prieta, and rolling north through the bay in waves. Inside Candlestick Park, the upper deck heaved like the deck of a ship in swell. Seams of concrete cracked and dropped dust on the fans below. The steel skeleton groaned. People grabbed the railings, grabbed strangers, grabbed their children and held on to whatever was closest. On live television, Al Michaels managed half a sentence, "I'll tell you what, we're having an earth," and the picture snapped to black. 60 million homes lost the feed at once. For a long, strange moment, the biggest broadcast in American sports simply ceased to exist. But the stadium held. Candlestick had been built to sway, and it swayed and it stayed up. When the ground finally went still, the fans looked around at one another, dazed, alive, and thousands of them cheered. They cheered the way a crowd cheers a near miss, a close call, a thunderclap that rattles the windows but breaks nothing. They thought the danger had come and gone. It hadn't. It was only just beginning, everywhere but there. A dozen miles across the bay in Oakland, a mile-and-a-half stretch of the Cypress Street Viaduct, a double-decked freeway packed with rush-hour traffic, collapsed. The upper deck fell flat onto the cars on the lower deck. 42 people were crushed in their vehicles on the drive home from work, the single deadliest scene of the day. A 50-foot slab of the Bay Bridge, the very bridge the series was nicknamed for, tore free and dropped onto the roadway below. In San Francisco's Marina District, ruptured gas mains fed fires that swallowed whole buildings while the ground beneath them, old landfill, turned soft as pudding. By the time the smoke cleared, at least 63 people were dead. Some later counts put it higher. Nearly 4,000 were injured. And a baseball game, the thing 62,000 people had dressed up and driven out to see, had, in 15 seconds, become the least important thing in Northern California. On the field, the players stopped being athletes. They became husbands and sons and fathers, vaulting the rails and sprinting into the stands to find their families in the crush. Will Clark found his people and got them onto the grass. Canseco searched the tunnels for his wife. The public address system had no power to tell anyone anything. Police moved through the aisles by voice alone, walking 62,000 people down darkened ramps and out into the parking lots as the sun sank behind a city where, unseen from the stadium, columns of smoke were already climbing. Baseball's commissioner, Fay Vincent, had held the job for barely a month. His predecessor and friend, Bart Giamatti, the scholar who had banned Pete Rose from the game only weeks before, had dropped dead of a heart attack in September, worn out. Now Vincent, the newcomer, stood in the concrete dark of Candlestick and made the only decision there was to make. The game was off. Then the entire World Series was suspended, no date, no promises, indefinitely. In a region counting its dead and pulling survivors out of a flattened freeway, no one could say whether the World Series should ever start again, or whether baseball had any right to ask. For 10 days, the World Series simply stopped. There had been delays before, rain, cold, a game pushed to tomorrow. Never this. Never a championship frozen in place while the host cities buried their dead and firefighters combed the collapsed freeway for anyone still breathing. Some voices said the series should be scrapped altogether, to stage a game on top of that grief felt obscene. Ballplayers went out to the cypress structure and the shelters. The green and gold and the orange and black stood in the same wreckage, and the standings meant nothing at all. But slowly the argument turned. The Bay had to get its power back, its bridges braced, its wounded healed and its dead mourned, and then, people began to say, maybe it needed one ordinary thing to hold on to. One familiar ritual that said the world had not ended. Fay Vincent refused to rush it. He waited until the region could stand, and set a new date, October 27, 10 days after the ground moved. When the teams came back to Candlestick, the whole feeling had changed. Before the first pitch they honored the 63 dead and the rescue workers who had pulled strangers out of the rubble with their hands. The red, white and blue bunting looked heavier than it had. And then, quietly, they played baseball, because that too is what people do after the worst day, sooner or later. They go back to work. They go back to the ordinary. The Athletics finished what they had started. They won Game 3, then Game 4, and swept the Giants 4-0, Oakland's first title in 15 years. It stands, to this day, as the only World Series ever interrupted by a natural disaster. The A's got a championship almost no one remembers the box score of. San Francisco got a memory it never asked for and will never forget. And Al Michaels, a man who called ball games for a living, was nominated that year for an Emmy not in sports, but in news. For one terrible evening he had stopped being a broadcaster and become a reporter, narrating a disaster live to a country that had switched on the television expecting a game. So why does a lopsided, half-forgotten sweep still matter, 30-odd years on? Because it drew a line the sport had never drawn before. The line where the biggest game in the country falls silent, and every last person in the stadium remembers, all at once, that they are just people standing in a shaking building. For 15 seconds the grandest stage in baseball became the sturdiest large structure in a breaking city, and its cameras, pointed at a pitcher's mound, became the eyes of a frightened nation. The game did not cause the tragedy. It could not fix it. But it stopped for it, and then it chose to come back, on purpose, as a small and stubborn act of return. The quake changed more than a schedule. Engineers tore down the deadly cypress structure and rebuilt the way freeways are stacked. Candlestick's survival became a lesson in why stadiums are built to move instead of stand rigid. Building codes were rewritten, bridges retrofitted, the Bay Bridge itself eventually rebuilt, and in the public memory, all of it begins with a World Series game that never got thrown. Every October since, when a World Series feels like the most important thing on earth, someone who was inside Candlestick that evening knows better. Knows the game is a gift and not a guarantee. Knows the ground it's played on was never as solid as it looked, and that the difference between a party and a catastrophe was about 30 minutes and a few miles of dirt. 62,000 people came to watch a baseball game and watched the earth open up instead. Almost all of them walked out alive. 42 commuters a few miles north, driving home from ordinary jobs, did not. If that quake had struck 30 minutes later, with the game underway, a ball in the air, and every eye in the region fixed on the field, how many more would never have made it home? Follow for more.